Whispers, everybody, on AM 1600 WKKX, the Valley's Watchdog. It is 8:06 p.m. here in downtown Wheeling, and it is a cold, cold evening.
Absolutely.
Lola's already shivering. It's pretty warm in here.
Well, it's nice in here. I've got the...
Hey, I think 55 degrees is great.
What?
I like it a little cool. I don't like it when it's really hot.
I like it cold. I'm like a polar bear. My bedroom, I still got the AC going. I got 2 fans running.
Oh, are you kidding?
Oh, man,
I've got my heat on today.
You're wearing what looks like a little sweater.
Oh, yes, I have my sweats on. This is what you'll see me in for the next 4 months.
Well, we can turn the camera around so everybody can... No. I'm Jordan Klein. I'm here with Nick Queen.
Hey, Jordan.
Lola Miller. And we have a guest, Eric Violet.
Yes, sir.
From Wheeling Paranormal. Eric will actually be stepping in for me next week.
Oh.
My father's having open heart surgery.
Oh, my goodness.
So, yeah. So,
well,
keep your thoughts and prayers out towards my dad.
We certainly
and give Eric some support as he...
Yeah, I'm going to let him fly on his own here.
Good luck, Eric.
As he babysits Nick.
Yeah, I do need some support at times. So... Well, you want to go ahead and bring our guest on, Jordan?
Yes. Today, our guest, all the way from Dublin, Ireland, Patrick Heron, was born in Dublin about 1952. He became interested in Bible prophecy concerning the end times around 96. In 97, his first book, Apocalypse Soon, was published and became a bestseller in Ireland. Then he followed up with Apocalypse 2000. Patrick's latest book, The Nephilim and the Pyramid of the Apocalypse, he believes is the first ever book proving overwhelmingly who built the pyramids and why. Patrick has a bachelor and a master's in business studies from Trinity College, Dublin, and a bachelor in theology degree in the College of Biblical Research from Rome City, Indiana. Patrick is not associated with any particular church or denomination. Patrick Heron, you with us?
I certainly am. Nice to speak to you, Jordan and Nick.
Nice to speak with you too. Glad you can call in.
Well, it's about
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
It's about 2 a.m. where you're at right now, right?
It's 10 after 1.
10 after 1, okay.
5 hours ahead of you guys on the East Coast.
Okay.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you for staying up late with us tonight.
Not at all. I'm delighted to do so. And greetings to all your listeners from the Emerald Isle.
Thank you so much. What's your weather like there? I'm just curious.
It's got quite cold today. We've had lousy, an absolutely horrible summer. In last March, we had 2 weeks, and it was like the middle of July. May and June weren't too bad, and then sort of July and August, we just had rain. And we had the same thing last year. There's been a definite change in the weather patterns over here, as there has in the United States and all over the world. Definitely, whatever is going on, there's something going on.
Oh, yeah.
Just, normally in the summer over here, you might get showers, and, when you get a nice soft summer shower over here, an Irish shower is a bit like a poem. But what we've been having these last couple of years, last summer was the same, was like monsoons. So things are very, very upside down.
I bet it's still beautiful there. I love Ireland. I'm so obsessed. Here's a question for you. How's the economy doing over there? Because here, not so well.
We were one of the richest countries in the world until about a year ago, and we've gone from something like a $5 billion surplus last year to a $7 billion deficit in 12 months.
Is your leaders related to George Bush by any chance?
Well, the whole thing is global.
Yeah, it is.
So
it is.
When America sneezes, we get pneumonia over here.
Well, I apologize.
I apologize for my country.
Look, it's the same everywhere. There's been about 6 banks in Europe have having to be bailed out by their governments in the last couple of days, and our government took the unusual step on Monday night of more or less guaranteeing all the deposits in the banks on early Tuesday morning, because they reckoned there was going to be such a run in the banks that, God knows what was going to happen. 1 or 2 of them might have gone under. And it's all connected to the subprime lending in America, and also the horrible bad practice that banks have been engaging
for years
here and all over Europe and the world, loaning money to people that can't afford to pay it back, and just very, very dodgy practices in the financial sector. But, there are some people. I was speaking at the Irish International UFO Conference this last weekend, And there's a British guy speaking at it. Ian Crane is his name. He's done a lot of talks at weekends like this, and I saw a DVD, a talk he gave 2 years ago, where he said this was all being manipulated by the powers that be. To loan money to people who can't afford them, to engage in all these practices whereby they're going to wipe out the middle classes, that it's all being done by the powers that be, the New World Order, Novus Ordo Seclorum, and it's all part of probably, it fits in with what I write about the coming one world government and stuff like that. So the writing's on the wall. We had the Lisbon Treaty over here a couple of months ago, where the whole of Europe is turning into the federal United States of Europe under the power of these political elites in Brussels.
Yeah.
And they don't have any regard for democracy at all, because the Dutch and the French already voted this down 2 years ago, and they just ignored them. So we, the little couple of million Irish people over here, voted it down. And, they said the rules were that if everybody didn't agree that it wouldn't go ahead, but they're just sort of ignoring the democratic wish of the Irish people, which reflected the wish of many of the people in the countries of Europe, and they're just powering ahead, and it is going to go ahead, whether we like it or not.
Oh, yeah.
And this is all part of what's happening all over the world. I think Canada, United States, and Mexico are all joining up, aren't they?
They're talking about trying to do that, where we would have one currency for all of North and South America, be the Amero, or something like that.
That's scary. Now, Patrick, you went to biblical school, right? So, I mean, there's a faith there, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Me too. I think all of us are faith-based.
Yeah.
And,
why they all look at me?
well, three of us I know. But in the last show, they were talking about the Antichrist. And I want to know if your thoughts, I don't want to hurt anything if you wrote about that. I mean, what are your thoughts on, the times we're in now and the Antichrist? I mean, what is the Antichrist to you?
Well, it's funny you should mention that, because this time last year I started writing a series of articles called the Prophecies of the Antichrist. They're very short articles. They're only 3 pages long on your computer screen, because I find when I'm reading stuff on the computer, if the thing is too long, I just get fed up.
Yeah, me too.
So I wrote 15 of those from last September, and several people wrote to me and told me I should turn it into a book. So I'm hoping to knuckle down later on in this month and turn that into a book. Now, the Antichrist and who he is, the Bible tells us exactly who the Antichrist is. It gives us his name. It tells us where he is right now. It tells us where he was in the past, the dim, distant past, what he's going to do in the future. It tells us a whole bunch of people, or a bunch of stuff about this guy, but people have just missed it, because the secret and the truth about this guy is hidden in plain sight in the pages of the book of Revelation. And this ties in. I'll have to start off this by telling you a little bit about my book, which is called The Nephilim and the Pyramid of the Apocalypse, because you have to know a little bit of the background in order to know who this guy is, right?
Yeah.
And the Nephilim are first mentioned in Genesis 6:4, where it says there were giants in the earth in those days, and the Hebrew word there is Nephilim. It should read there were Nephilim in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them. It says, these became the mighty men which were of old, men of renown. In another version it says, these were the heroes of old. So the Nephilim comes from the Hebrew word nephal, which means to fall. So Nephilim are the fallen ones. They're what you and I would call fallen angels.
Now, they were the ones that were kicked out of heaven, right?
No, not quite. They were a band of they were a small group of the rebellious angels. According to the book of Enoch, there was 200 in number who descended on Mount Hermon in the days of Jared. That's about 1,000 years prior to the flood of Noah. And they manifested on the earth as gods. That's with a small g. Very supernatural, super powerful beings, probably very attractive looking, irresistible to the women. And they mated with the human women. And the women gave birth to offspring. And these offspring were the giants of the Old Testament. So the Nephilim are the fallen ones because they fell from heaven. They fell from grace and fell to earth. Now, they're what you and I would call fallen angels, but I don't like the word angels because as soon as you mention angel, people either think of a guy with, long blonde hair and 20-foot wings and a a big spotlight behind them, or else they think of a little naked cherubim, no genitalia, a bow and arrow trying to shoot someone in the heart, make them fall in love. But when you go and study the appearance of angels, in fact, a better translation of the word would be messengers or agents. And when you go and see where these guys turned up throughout the whole of Scripture, they always appear as men. They're described as men. They're referred to as men. They wear clothes. They've been mistaken as men. They eat, they drink, and apparently they could have sexual relations with women. So these guys came and fell to earth, had sex with women, and produced these offspring. And they were knocking around for about 1,000 years. And by the end of the 1,000 years, they'd infected and affected the DNA of almost everybody in the whole world, which could have been 20, 30 million people at that time. Oh, wow. The only people that weren't affected were Noah and his family.
Now,
and it says in Genesis... Yeah?
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I have a question. You're saying that the gods themselves, or the gods, they're masquerading as gods, I'm guessing, are having sexual relations with women. Now, I know studying mythology that Zeus, almost all the gods in the Greek mythology, almost in all the different mythologies, there's constant stories about them coming and mating with women. Now, is there some connection perhaps between what happened with the Nephilim and into this mythology that got carried on, do you think?
You exactly hit the nail on the head.
Good job, Nick.
The Greek and Roman mythology is all about these guys. That's where it talks about the gods came down from heaven. They lived in Mount Olympus and Delphi. Zeus came down. He took alchemy into wife, a mortal woman. She almost died giving birth to Hercules. That's where all this stuff comes from, and that's who these guys were. And you see, that accounts, like one of the central themes from my book is the Great Pyramid of Giza and what it means and what it signifies, because it's a prophetic monument. It has to do with something at the end of the book of Revelation, which I'll go into later. But there's loads and loads of monuments all over the world that there's no accounting for, right? That, like the Great Pyramid of Giza, for instance, we could not build that today with all the money we have, all the technology we have, the machinery. We couldn't do it. Mm-hmm. Yet we're asked to believe that, primitive man, or ancient Egyptians, if you like, wandering in the desert dressed in animal skins, were able to erect this huge pyramid, yet they hadn't figured out how to invent the wheel. It's ridiculous. That's a bit like saying if you give a screwdriver to a chimpanzee, he's going to make a television set for you.
Well, that's
why when you see...
that's kind of like the tribes of Africa, how like 2,000 years ago, they're pretty much the same as they are now, but when you think of like the ancient Romans, how evolved their whole system, their culture, their buildings, how they evolved so much farther, do you think that the Nephilim had some kind of involvement in that?
Oh, they absolutely did have had involvement with it. Let me give you a couple of facts and figures about the Great Pyramid real quick. It was originally finished in a polished white limestone, and its pyramidion apparently was made of gold. So it would have been white, smooth, iridescent, gleaming in the sun of the desert some 5,500 years ago. Each side of the Great Pyramid is an equilateral triangle, which faces exactly to the true north, south, east, and west. The length of each side of the base of the Great Pyramid in cubits is 365.2422 cubits, which happens to be the exact length of a solar year, including the fraction for the leap year. The angle of the slope rises at 10 to 9. That is, for every 10 feet you go up the side, you rise in altitude by 9 feet. And if you multiply the height of the Great Pyramid by 10 to the power of 9, you get 91,840,000, the distance from the Earth to the Sun in miles. It's situated almost in the exact dead center of the world, halfway between the northern tip of Norway, the southern cape of South Africa, the west coast of Mexico, and the east coast of China, and it intersects the 30th parallel, both longitude and latitude. There's enough stone in the Great Pyramid to build a 6-foot wall from Los Angeles to New York. If it was a skyscraper, it would be 42 stories high, which meant it was the highest building in the world until, you guys started building skyscrapers. And listen to this. The solution to the mathematical problem of how to square the circle is incorporated within the geometry of the Great Pyramid of Egypt. Man. Yet, the people who built it hadn't figured out how to invent the wheel. That's why when you see documentaries about the Great Pyramid, they're always dragging these huge stones along the ground, which is total rubbish. So there's something else going on, right?
Yeah.
Just to jump ahead very fast, to tie in with what does it mean. If you get in order to figure out, because there's a prophecy in Isaiah 19:19, a very enigmatic prophecy, which says, in that day. And when it talks about that day, it's always talking about the last days or the end times or the day of wrath, the day of tribulation. It says, in that day shall there be a pillar in the midst or the middle of the land of Egypt, and an altar at the border thereof, and it shall be for a sign and for a witness unto the Lord of hosts in that day. So it says there's going to be a pillar on the border of Egypt and in the middle at the same time. Now, how can something be on the border and in the middle? But if you go back and look at ancient history, Egypt was divided in two. There was Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt, and the border that ran through the middle, just where the Nile breaks up into the delta that goes out into the Mediterranean. And the only thing that's on that border and is in the middle of Egypt is the Great Pyramid of Giza. So it says that this altar and pillar would be a sign and a witness unto something, unto God in the last days. So what is it a sign of, and what is it a witness to? And in order to figure that out, we jump up to John chapter 14, where Jesus said, in my Father's house are many mansions. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and take you unto myself, that where I am, there you may be also. Then we go up to Corinthians 5, where Paul says we have an eternal house in heaven whose architect was God and it was not made by human hands. Then you go to Hebrews, and there's 3 or 4 references. It says Abraham looked for a city in heaven whose builder and maker was God. Then in another place it talks about you've come to the heavenly city, the New Jerusalem, Mount Zion, the city of the living God. There's a few other references to it in the book of Revelation. And at the end of the book of Revelation, in the second last chapter, it talks about a new heaven and a new earth, which is to come in the future, after the apocalypse is finished with, and the millennial reign of Christ is done away with. And it talks about a new city and a new earth. And it describes this city, the New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven and descending onto this new earth. And it describes this future city in great detail. It tells us all the different stones it's made out of. It gives us the thickness of the walls. It says it's got 12 gates made out of a single pearl each. The river of life flows out from it. There's no light there because the light is provided by the Lamb and by God. And at the end of this detailed description, we're given the dimensions of this future city. And we're told its length and its breadth and its height is the same. Mm-hmm. That is a pyramid in shape. So there's a direct connection between the Great Pyramid of Giza, built some 3,500 years BC, and this future pyramid city, the New Jerusalem. If you like, the Great Pyramid of Giza is pointing into the future at this future pyramid city, and this future pyramid city is pointing back at the Great Pyramid of Giza. That's why it said that this altar and pillar would be a sign and a witness unto God in the last days, and that's the connection. The only difference is that I believe that these fallen angels, Lucifer, Satan, and his fellow fallen angels, they always copy or imitate or ape what the true God does. Mm-hmm. So when these guys fell to earth, they came from this place called heaven, where Jesus is now, sitting on the right hand of God, and all these other angels are there, and 24 elders sitting on 24 thrones. We don't know who those guys are. When they fell from earth, they built this incredible pyramid with its polished white limestone, its gold pyramidion in the middle of the world, shining and gleaming in the sun. But they built this as an earthly representation of the celestial city that they had come from. But they built it as a monument to their own pride, their own ego, their own hubris. So I believe the Great Pyramid of Giza, as I say, is an earthly imitation and a pale imitation of the Mount Zion, the city of God, where God lives now with his Son on his right hand, all these myriads of angels and these other people up there, and where he is now preparing a place for us. He's up there now with his sleeves rolled up, he's mixing cement, he's getting the place ready for a visitation. So that's the connection between the Great Pyramid of Giza and the New Jerusalem. But it also answers the question for all these other things around it. Like there's 3 huge pyramids in Mexico, there's pyramids in Guatemala, you have these incredible Nazca lions down in Peru, mm-hmm. You have the giant heads in Easter Island, you've got Angkor Wat in Cambodia, you have Newgrange here in Ireland, you've got Stonehenge in England. There's loads of them all over the place that there's no accounting for them.
I was going to ask you about Newgrange.
Now,
it'd be interesting.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Thing, very quickly about Newgrange. It's a passage tomb. It's about 3 or 4 acres big. Uh-huh. And there's a little passage you've got to bend down to go into it. And on one day of the year, when the sun rises, because of the angle it rises on this one day of the year, it illuminates the inner chamber. And it's the only one day that happens in the year, and that's the winter solstice, 21st of December every year.
Oh, wow.
And interestingly, you've got the Mayan calendar, the incredible stone Mayan calendar over there in South America that experts say is the most accurate calendar in the world, and it stops on the 21st of December 2012.
Now, what exactly do you think that means? I mean, I've heard people say that that's the end of the world. Some people say that that's the beginning of the new world. What exactly do you think that means for us?
I haven't a clue. I don't know what it means. I don't know whether it means anything or not. I just know that there has to be a connection between whoever built both Newgrange and the Mayan thing, and to me this was the Nephilim.
Now,
the original. Sorry? I'm sorry.
Where exactly did they get? I mean, because all of these sites that you mentioned, to some degree, line up with the the astronomy around the Earth. I mean, like the three pyramids in Egypt. They kind of line up with the belt of Orion.
That's right.
And all of this happens around the world. Where exactly do they get this knowledge, and why would they do that in the first place?
Because one of the names for the angels in the Bible, in the Old Testament and in the Book of Revelation, they're called the stars of heaven, and they're called the host of heaven. And it says that God originally named and numbered the stars, and it seems to me that a lot of them have astronomical associations, that they have astronomical names, like the gods that fell to earth were Apollo, Mars, Jupiter, Neptune, Poseidon, Mercury, etc., etc. Mm-hmm. And they seem to have astronomical names. And it calls Jesus Christ, in the New Testament, he's called the bright and morning star. And originally, Lucifer meant the bright and morning star, which was Venus. So all the prophecies of the Bible, from Genesis to Revelation, are written in the planisphere of the stars, in the constellations in the zodiac. That's why the Magi, the Zoroastrian Magi, the astronomers, then knew that the Messiah was being born, because they were able to understand these prophecies. When they saw the Virgo lining up with Leo, other things like that, they knew that Jesus was being born, the Messiah was being born of the Virgin, Leo the King, and all that stuff. So these guys appear, like Lucifer means bright and morning star, they appear to have astronomical associations and astronomical names, and they also know that the prophecies of the Bible are written in the stars from Genesis to Revelation. So they're very keenly aware of the astronomical significance and the procession of the stars. Now, all that knowledge, for the most part, has been lost to us today. It was handed down by word of mouth from Adam all the way down through the patriarchs. But once men started writing down the Old Testament and stuff like that, there was no more need for this knowledge. And I'm not aware of it. But these guys are very aware of it. And that sort of biblical astronomy has turned into astrology, which is a sort of an occult science now. Mm-hmm. But very interestingly, just to get back to the fallen angels, these guys caused such blood and violence and evil on the earth in the days prior to the flood that God said, I've had enough of this. So he sent the flood. He drowned all the human race. He drowned all the giants. But you cannot drown spirit men. And we're told that these spirit men, these original fallen angels, are locked up in a subterranean prison, which is called, in Scripture, it's called the Bottomless Pit. It's called the Abyss. Yeah. And once in Peter, it's called Tartarus, or Tartarus. And this again ties in with Roman and Greek mythology, where the gods are imprisoned in Tartarus because they rebelled against Zeus. And it ties in with the abode of the dead and the underworld of Egyptian mythology, the Egyptian Book of the Dead, the pyramid texts. We're told the gods are imprisoned, and you've got to cross the river Styx to get to the underworld, and Hades is the keeper of the netherworld and all that stuff. So again, we see the so-called mythologies of Greek and Rome and Egypt tying in like a hand on a glove with the actual biblical accounts. And by the way, the Book of Enoch fills in a lot of the blanks that were not given in the Bible. Now, the thing that makes the Book of Enoch of significance to us is the fact that it's quoted directly by Jude in the Epistle of Jude, and Jude was one of Jesus Christ's brothers, mm-hmm. and he specifically and directly quotes from the Book of Jude, which is a flag to us to show us that we can go there and learn something for it. And he talks about these watchers of heaven coming down to earth, having sex with women, and that they produced these monstrosities that were born of them, that taught men how to mix herbs and make drugs, how to make weapons of war, how to abort fetuses in the womb, and all sorts of bad stuff like that. And it actually names the 20 leaders of the 200 of these fallen angels that fell to earth in the days of Jared. And the name of their leader was Azazel. Now, you asked originally about who the Antichrist is. And in the book of Revelation, in chapter 9, it talks about this bottomless pit being opened. It says a star fell from heaven with the key to the bottomless pit. So this star is a metaphor for an angel. And it says the bottomless pit is opened, and all these scorpions and locusts and things are released. Now, scorpions and locusts and serpents are, again, figures of speech for these spirit men, which are the fallen angels. By the way, angels are spirit. You and I are flesh and blood, but these guys are spirit. And we don't know what spirit is, but they're not constrained by the ordinary laws of physics as we are. But we look like them. They look like us. That's why it says in Genesis 3 or 4 times, let us make man in our image, in the image of God made he man. So these guys are men, but they're spirit men. That's what angels are. So it says they're released, and in verse 11, it tells us that they have a leader over them. It says the angel of the abyss, who's the king over the angels of the abyss. And it gives us his name. And his name in Hebrew is Abaddon, and his name in Greek is Apollyon. And both those names mean the destroyer. And he goes on to become what's called the beast from the abyss.
Okay, is that the Antichrist? Okay.
That is the Antichrist. So it gives us his name. His name is, as I say, Abaddon or Apollyon. But here's the rub, gentlemen, and this is very interesting. Apollyon, Apollyon, Y-O-N, is nothing more than how the Greeks spell Apollo.
Wow.
Right? And Apollo, as you guys know, was one of the original leaders of the original pantheon of gods that fell to earth and ruled back prior to the flood of Noah, along with the other guys like Jupiter, Mercury, Mars, Neptune, Poseidon, and there was female ones there too. Athena, Demeter, Hera. Athens is named after Athena. You know, Rome is named after Romulus, who was the offspring of one of the gods. Heraclion in Crete is named after Hercules. Europe is named after Europa, who was another goddess. So all these tie in. But in Greek and Roman mythology, Apollo was the epitome of the beauty of man. He was the god of medicine, of music. He had his oracle at Delphi, where the people used to go and you know, ask the oracle about things. And beautiful-looking guy, very eloquent, musical, and had prophecy. And it is this same guy, Apollo, who was their leader back then, who we're told is the king of the angels of the abyss, who comes up and he's known as the beast from the abyss. And it says twice in Revelation 17, the beast which once was, now is not, and will come up out of the abyss and go to his destruction. And the reason it says the beast who once was is because he once reigned on earth for about 1,000 years or so prior to the flood of Noah. It says now is not, because he's locked up in this place called Tartarus, or the pit, or the bottomless pit, or the abyss. And it says, but will come up out of the abyss and go to his destruction. And that doesn't mean that he gets destroyed. It means he goes out and he destroys the world. Because by the end of the apocalypse, so by the end of the 7 years or the 3.5 years, however long it is, about half the population are going to be dead under the rulership of this future political leader. And that's exactly who it tells. It names him. He's written right there. So, you know, the Antichrist is not Barack Obama. It's not John McCain. It's not Sarah Palin, right? It's not Hitler. It's not Stalin. It's not some rich Saudi prince, you know, who's worth billions and can speak 12 languages and lives over in Jordan or somewhere. He's named in Revelation chapter 9, verse 11. You can go and read it. And it's when these guys arrive on the earth again, they're going to arrive again as gods, because he's called the Antichrist. Antichrist has two meanings. One, it means against Christ, but the other meaning is in the stead of Christ. So he's going to be in the stead of the Messiah. And I think when he comes on the earth with the rest of the guys out of the bottomless pit, he's going to present himself as a god, as the true Messiah. Because remember, the Jews are still waiting for the Messiah to come the first time. They don't believe Jesus Christ was the true Messiah. And also, interestingly enough, the Muslims are waiting for their Messiah to come. He's called the 12th Imam, or the Mahdi. And we're told that several hundred years ago, as about a 14-year-old boy, the Mahdi went and hid himself in a well somewhere down in the ground. And he's going to come out this hole in the ground again and lead Islam in a series of victorious battles over their enemy and establish Islam as the world religion. And he is going to have as his lieutenant, wait for it, Jesus Christ. Now, interestingly enough, there's two men who are going to rise up in the days of the apocalypse, the Antichrist and his right-hand man called the false prophet. And I have a funny feeling that the Antichrist is going to come. He's going to be acceptable to the Jews as the true Messiah. He'll be acceptable to all of what I call Christendom, which is all the, couple of billion people in the world who say they're Christians, but they haven't a clue about who Jesus Christ is, which is about 1 billion Catholics for a start. I used to be one of those.
Amen.
Right?
Amen.
And then this false prophet, this right-hand guy, he may very well come along and present himself as the Mahdi, so he'll be able to appease the Muslims. So you've the Messiah, the Antichrist, coming in the stead of the Messiah, who will appease Christendom and the Jews, and the Mahdi, who will appease Muslims, and they'll bring in a world peace, which will be a world peace for a certain amount of time, and then, but the last half of the apocalypse is where the guacamole hits the fan, and that's where all the things start to go bad, So that's who the Antichrist is. And there's not a lot of people know that.
No, I think it's funny, like you were talking about Apollo being the god of music, and then Lucifer, when he was in heaven, wasn't he the choir director in heaven?
I don't know. Was he?
I believe he was the one that led the praises to God, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, my dad's a preacher, and that's what he always told me, that Satan was the choir director, of the heaven's angels before he fell.
Well, I heard somebody saying that the devil has all the best tunes.
I mean, to some degree, if you look at Satan himself coming down and corrupting, you take something that's beautiful and you corrupt it into something that's ugly or something, to some degree. And I've always heard that he takes something that's beautiful like music and and music itself at times gets to be this obscene.
Marilyn Manson.
Yeah, Marilyn Manson would be a good thing for that. Now, Patrick, how could people find out more about you? I know you have your website. I believe it's NephilimApocalypse.com. Is that correct?
Well, it is, but I've got a much simpler one also.
Oh, okay, well, that's much better.
Neph.ie.
Okay.
NEPH, which is the short for Nephilim. Nephilim is NEPHILIM. This is NEPH.ie. So on there, I've written 3 books. I've got 3 DVDs. In fact, the talk I gave at the weekend at the UFO conference, I gave the same one at the International UFO Conference in Laughlin, Nevada last February, March. And it's called The Return of the Nephilim. Because just as these guys are going to come out of the bottomless pit in the coming apocalypse, around the same time, according to Revelation chapter 12, there's going to be a war in heaven. And it says Michael and his angels fight against the dragon and his angels. And it says their place is found no more in heaven, and they are cast down to the earth. And this didn't happen thousands of years ago. This is still future, because the next verse says that day and night, the dragon, which is, again, a figure of speech for the serpent, who is the devil and Satan, it says day and night he appears before the throne of God, accusing the brethren. He's up there day and night saying, hey, look at that Jordan guy down there. He went out and had a few beers last night.
He stays a busy guy.
And a row with his wife. He kicked the cat. He's a bad guy.
Oh, Jordan.
I'm horrible.
And then he's saying, that Paddy Heron guy down there, he had 4 pints of Guinness, last night.
Well, Patrick, I don't know if you, this may sound really ignorant, but there was a show on BBC called Hex. And they kind of got into the Nephilim and all. That's where I got my first information about them to begin with. And that show really intrigued me. Of course, it was fiction, but it was really very good. And for somebody that wasn't familiar at all with any of this, it really did give quite a lot of the background now that you have been talking about. They had included in that show.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of bits out of it here and there. I never really watched it. But the reason I think all this is happening, you've got all this UFO stuff happening all around the world. There was an incredible one in Dublin Airport here in August. You've millions of people saying they're being abducted. You've all these crop circles. Then you mix this in with shows like Hex or The Fallen Ones, or Stargates, Atlantis Stargate, or Buffy the Vampire, all the movies coming out of Hollywood. You know, it's becoming second nature to a lot of people in the world now to sort of believe in all this extraterrestrial, occult stuff going on. And I think what Satan and his minions are doing are preparing the world for what's coming down, the truth. Because about the same time that these guys come up out of the abyss, all the rest of the guys, like Satan and the rest of those guys, are getting kicked out of heaven, and they're coming to earth. In fact, in Revelation chapter 6, it says, the stars of heaven fall to earth like figs falling from a fig tree, shaken by a mighty wind. Now, regular stars don't fall to the earth. They just burn up in space. So these stars of heaven is a metaphor for the house of heaven, for those fallen angels. And it says they fall to earth like figs falling from a fig tree. So they're going to show up here. But they're going to be good-looking. The Antichrist is probably a beautiful-looking guy. He's, you know,
I'm
George
not the
Clooney.
Antichrist, ladies.
He's going to be a cross between George Clooney and Sean Connery.
Oh, wow. Okay. I'd be hooked.
It says they're going to deceive the world with their lying signs and wonders. Just as Jesus Christ was able to do signs, miracles, and wonders, these guys you're talking about supernatural beings, you know? Super powerful, glorious spirit beings of superior aspect, full of wisdom and knowledge, full of beauty and fascination, with the ability to enchant and to charm. And this is who these guys are, you know? They're not a bunch of idiots. They're powerful beings. That's how they were able to build the pyramids. They don't need machines. They can levitate things into being. And if you see some of the things that, you know, these guys did in the Old Testament and the New Testament, for instance, when Moses went into Pharaoh, he threw down his staff and it turned into a serpent, and all his soothsayers who were working for Satan, they threw down their staffs and they turned into snakes, into serpents as well. You see what the devil did in the New Testament. He was able to take Jesus Christ and bring him up to the highest highest pinnacle of the temple and tempt him with all the glories of the world and say, if you bow down and worship me, all these things will be yours, because they are delivered unto me, and to whomsoever I will, I give it, because he is the God of this world. You know, he's the one who's in charge here at the moment. So these guys have a lot of power, and they're going to deceive the whole world with their lying signs and wonders. And people are going to think that this is the real Messiah, that this is the real Jesus Christ.
So here's a question. Like, okay, let's say the end times comes this week. Okay, like, I mean, it happens tomorrow. What can we do maybe to protect ourselves?
Well, I don't know where your stand on this is, but
I'm very, very faith-based. My whole family is.
Well, I know. Well, you know, there's a lot of people in America believe that we're all going to go through the tribulation, but I absolutely, totally do not believe that the Word teaches that, because several times Paul specifically states that we are saved from the wrath to come, and there's going to be an evacuation before the manure hits the fan, and that's the next big thing on the timetable. You know, a lot of Americans call it the rapture. Paul calls it the gathering together of the saints, and there must first be a departure of the gathering together of the saints before the day of the Lord comes and before the man of sin can be revealed. You see, we are the light of the world. When Jesus was here on earth, he said, I am the light of the world. As long as a man follows me, he shall not walk in darkness. Then, when on the day of Pentecost, the Holy Spirit was given, people were saved, they got the gift of Holy Spirit, and then it says, ye are the lights of the world, you know, and you shine forth. So everywhere Christians are is the light. So when Jesus comes back and takes out the church, all the light is gone. That's when the darkness is going to manifest itself, and that's when these guys are going to appear on the earth. So there's going to be an evacuation of the church, his people, and then all the stuff that's in the apocalypse is going to start happening. So, as I often say to people, the bad news is the Titanic is going down. The good news is you don't have to get on it. So there's a way out. But that's what I provide in my books. And by the way, my book, The Nephilim and the Pyramid of the Apocalypse, it was #1 in the Prophecies section of Amazon Books for almost 2 years. Wow. I still get emails. I got an email from a girl today who said, I'm reading your book, and it's absolutely blown me. I think I've had about 4 or 5 emails just in the last week from people who told me that they're reading my book, and it's blown them away. It's 3 people wrote to me and said this is the best book I ever read. So if you want your guest to be flabbered,
I enjoyed flabbered guest.
I'm a bit of a flabby guest. Some too much of that black beer, over here. I like a few pints of the black stuff, But I guarantee you, the first half of the book is all about the fallen angels and how it ties in with all these ancient monuments in the world and who built them. And then the second half is a summary of the prophecies of the book of Revelation and the signs we are told are preceded. And then I tied the 2 things together. And I'm the first one in the world who's ever tied up the connection between the Great Pyramid of Giza and the future Pyramid City, the New Jerusalem, which is to come in the future.
No, you're definitely the first I've heard.
Well, the first one who ever came up with that, and that's why the book has been so successful. And also, the fact that the Antichrist is actually named in plain sight in chapter 9, verse 11 of the book of Revelation, and his name is Apollo. Now, when he comes up out of the ground, and when he comes on the earth as a great political leader and religious leader as the Messiah, I don't know what he's going to call himself. It might be something different. In the book of Enoch, he's called Azazel.
Very bad.
But and I think it's him himself. I mean, when I wrote the book, I speculated that he might possess a human being. But when I look at the Greek words in the book of Revelation about him, it says, when the people behold the Antichrist, they say, who can make, or the beast, they say, who can make war with the beast? And if you look at the Greek word for behold, it's like to look on them with their eyes. It's them themselves, just as they appeared on the earth some 1,000 years prior to the flood of Noah and beguiled the women folk of that time with their beauty and their fascination and their power as gods with a small g. So they're going to appear again. And, it's going to be a scary time. And it's very close, by the way, I think. Very, very, very close.
No, I agree.
We are closer.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Closer all the time.
We are going to be linking your books, if we haven't already, to our website.
Did so.
Okay. We got your books lined up so where people go to our website and they can get them directly from it. It'll link right to your Amazon site.
And at the same time, if you go to neph.ie, they're right on the front page of Patrick's site. So.
No, and I'll tell you what you do, guys. One of you, Nick, send me an email with your address on it, and I'll send you guys over a couple of books as a gift.
Oh,
great.
Thank you.
Ooh.
You have is it an 800 number to where you can get the books quicker than Amazon? Is that true?
No, that's sort of gone now. That was with my last publisher. But people can get it in Barnes & Noble, and in places like that. It's my book, the rights were bought by one of the top 10 publishers in the United States, and they've had it in the bookshops for the last year or so. So the cheapest place to buy it on Amazon, or if you want a signed copy, you can write to me and buy it on my website. If people like DVDs, I've got that DVD called The Return of the Nephilim, and it's pretty good. I've got a great PowerPoint on it with about 50 color pictures and video clips that Grizzly Adams did for me, because Grizzly Adams Productions, they made a TV special based on my books.
Oh, wow.
Called and the End Times, and I'm in it. I appear in there, and you can get that in Barnes & Noble and Walmart and other places too. So that The Return of the Nephilim is pretty good, and I crack a few jokes on that, and it's because it's a UFO crowd, so I'm a little bit bawdy in that, but as long as you're not, insulted too easily, you'll probably get a good laugh out of that. So I'll send you guys over a copy of that. You'll get a good joke, a good laugh out of it.
Well, that's good. We really, really enjoyed this. We thank you very much, and we hope that maybe we can have you on again. If you're really
well, if I write this other book, gentlemen, I'll definitely come on again, because I'll be promoting it probably early next year. Hopefully, all things going well. You guys are in West Virginia, is that correct?
Yes,
correct.
Okay, I drove through there a couple of years ago. I stayed near Roanoke for a while.
No, that's Virginia. We're in West Virginia.
Yeah, it's two different states, but it's a couple hours from here.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, is the Rehoboth Beach? Is that down?
That's Delaware.
Oh, that's Delaware, isn't it?
Yeah. The United States is confused, and we get lost.
We get confused too. Don't worry.
Gentlemen, I hitchhiked from California to Pennsylvania back in 1974.
Wow.
Where in Pennsylvania?
I was hanging out in a place called Jim Thorpe, which is near the Lehighton, in the Lehigh Valley.
Oh, that's eastern Pennsylvania.
You
See,
went
we're
all
western
the way.
Pennsylvania.
He probably would have went
you
through
did.
here, though, because if you Interstate 70 goes straight in
National Road.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Interstate 70, you came right through Wheeling.
I stayed in the Underbush Motel.
We've got several of those. We've got a lot of those.
I literally did stay under the bush a few times.
I don't know if I'd recommend you hitchhiking again from California.
It's a scary world now.
Yeah.
I will be. If I do that trip again, it'll be in a trailer. Don't worry.
Well, Patrick, thank you very much for calling us, and we'll definitely keep in contact, sir.
Thank you very much, gentlemen and lady. What's the lady?
Lola. My name is Lola.
Lola.
Yes.
Beautiful name. The Kinks wrote a song about you, didn't they?
Yeah, okay. Now you're skating on thin ice here.
Okay, gentlemen. God bless. Thanks, and great to talk to you.
Have a good
God
night,
bless
sir.
And good night to all your listeners. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Oh, my.
Loved it.
Yeah, that was very, very interesting. That was awesome.
Yeah, I'm like speechless. There was too much information.
I feel like I learned something. I feel like I went to church and made a friend.
Aww. He would be so much fun. Just like Todd and I were talking about how you kind of get stoned to, talk about some of these things. He'd be a riot. Just sit around, have a couple beers with.
You'd have to have a Guinness, so.
Well, yeah, but we could provide that. We could provide that.
We'll have to get him a plane ticket.
No, we need tickets there.
Oh, that's a good. Yeah, we'll do a remote.
Going back time, no books, tickets.
Road trip.
I think it's not a road trip.
You got to get in a canoe and start paddling.
Oh, that was really. But I was kind of familiar with some of that stuff,
right.
And.
No, it was good. Like, I've heard of the Nephilim before. Mm-hmm. I wasn't too aware of what they were. I knew I was involved in demons. I think Goliath, the story of David and Goliath. Goliath was supposedly descendant or offspring of a Nephilim, right. But the way he tied it together, all the way into like the pyramids, and then I came into it really skeptical, and I'm like, wow, I believe everything you just said. Now I believe in Roman mythology too.
Yeah, I mean it's really hard. It's really hard to argue anything that he brought up because he has it all covered. Like everything he came up with was covered.
Oh yeah.
Well, what's amazing too is though. Any of these old stories, whether it's the Roman gods or the Greek gods or Christian beliefs, they're all so similar because sometime, somewhere, one single story had to have started it.
Right.
There's always talk of the Moses kind of character with the baby in the river and being rescued and things like that. And it flows all through, whether it's, South American folklore or ancient Mesopotamian folklore even goes back to
Joseph Campbell
stories like that.
Yeah, Joseph Campbell talked about that to some degree. He talked about something called the archetypes. He said that there was a limited number of stories. You have the story of like the hero's quest or different romance stories and stuff, and that would explain that you could look at that template and every story. Yeah. There's modifications here and there, but you can see the hero's quest in like Star Wars, and what he explained, and he went in through and showed in ancient stories all the way up, in using Star Wars, he goes and there's a calling, and there's he rejects it, but then he's called back because of an event, and he showed how that would work throughout every culture, and that's there he says it's in our genes to some degree. It's in our.
It does well in our movies too.
Well, the genetic memory.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like the Jungian kind of images. Jungian. Yeah. I just showed my philosophy teacher from a long time ago is listening, and I'm going to get yelled at.
Yes, you will.
That was Jordan who said it.
Stop blaming Jordan.
You heard Patrick say that Satan's up there right now. I mean, why can't we add that to him?
That's really cruel.
He said Carl Jung's name wrong.
Well, there is one thing I wanted to ask him. I'm reading a book now. It's called The Jericho Pact, and it's it's kind of like a prelim to World War III. But it goes back to a codex that supposedly was passed down from Abraham. And, well, actually, God gave, I think, Abraham these codexes that have incredible, like, powers to them or something. But, some of the history in this I didn't quite get. But I was going to, if we had had a lot more time, have brought that up because, it goes back to the time that he was talking, and these things are actually small pyramids. And individually they're powerful, but you put all three together and it's apocalyptic. And, and so I just...
That'd be something you could probably email him. He says he reads his emails. Apparently he's on here, so he reads emails, but I'm sure he'd answer any questions.
Well, this thing with like Abraham had one, and who brought down the walls of Jericho?
Joshua.
Okay. Yeah. He had one that was passed down, and they tried to get them as split up as they possibly could around the world because of, the power. But that supposedly is what helped the walls to fall. I don't know. It's now I'm really not telling the story very well, but I'd like to ask him about that.
It seems like any number of the different relics supposedly that, been passed
skulls.
on. Yeah, like
the crystal skulls.
The crystal skulls.
Indiana Jones.
I'm trying to think of the one from Indiana Jones. I mean, you've got the Ark of the Covenant, but he talks about the Spear of Destiny. Is that right?
Is that right? In the last one?
Well, I haven't seen. I don't know. It's something that's just
Nick's reading the fan books. That's Nick's a nerd. Okay.
Well, the Spear of Destiny is the spear that was used, and the reason I bring up the Spear of Destiny is that Hitler was looking for the Spear of Destiny, the Ark of the Covenant, all these different things. The Spear of Destiny was supposedly the spear that was used to stab Christ, yes. And supposedly by doing that, it was imbued with different powers and stuff. Of course, the Shroud of Turin being a relic and all that kind of stuff. It's all kind of interesting. We should get someone here to talk about all that. That'd be fun.
Can you explain Indiana Jones to us, please? we can have Harrison Ford and George Lucas and Steven Spielberg.
There we go.
Enlighten us. Nikki, who we got next week?
Next week we have Heidi Hollis. She's going to be talking to us about a book called Jesus is No Joke. She supposedly
that almost sounds like a song.
Jesus,
a Chrysagas Brothers song.
No, you did it. But she talks about that she had several. I don't know what the best word to say. Visitations with Christ that changed her life. She's also wrote a book called The Secret Wars that talks about shadow people that she's asked us to come back and talk to us at another time with that. But Jesus, no joke, different appearances of Christ in her life. From what I can understand, he appears just like Jordan would be appearing to me right now. Hopefully not in the same form.
We're taking all kinds of paranormal here, guys. We're hitting religion. We're hitting everything. So
sure are.
Enjoy everything we're doing.
Hey, if you have any suggestions for guests, go to our website, whispersradio.com, and send me an email, whispers1600@gmail.com. I'm looking for people right now to fill up for January and February, March, and the rest of that year, 2009.
I think 1 week we should just, again, go back to kind of our roots. Excuse me, and just have people calling in ghost stories or things like that from here.
That's what, and we're going to be doing that at the end of the month.
We're doing that, and this month we have a ghost story competition going on.
Oh, that's right.
October 29th.
Nobody tells me anything.
We have to have calls from people, and we feel kind of lonely because we haven't got too many calls the last few weeks, and we're kind of getting sad.
We've been kind of getting into some pretty heavy
don't really have
stuff.
time for it.
Yeah.
So Jordan's going to go home and cry, and I got to comfort him. So
We'll lighten it up.
We'll make Eric comfort him, and I'm going to just go home.
All right, that's all we got this week on Whispers. Remember, next week, Mr. Eric Violet's going to be joining Nick and Lola. Send out your well wishes to my dad.
Absolutely.
Until next week, friends, we leave you with this. Don't be afraid, only believe. Whispers is brought to you by the Toy and Plastic Brick Museum in Bel Air, Ohio.
Attention kids of all ages from 1 to 101. Want to see Darth Vader and R2-D2? What about Spider-Man? Or how about a pirate that's traveled the 7 seas, or a NASA-trained and certified astronaut? Kobe Bryant and Dirk Nowitzki are there too. And where can you see all this and more? At the Toy and Plastic Brick Museum on Noble Street in the all-American town of Bel Air, Ohio. Dan Brown and the folks at the Toy and Plastic Brick Museum are now listed in the Guinness Book of World Records, last year for the largest Lego image ever, and this year for the world's largest castle made entirely of Lego building blocks. Located at 4597 Noble Street in Bel Air, Ohio, in the old Gravel Hill School, the museum is open Wednesday through Sunday from 12 to 5 p.m. and Saturday from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. And there's Entertainment Daily, a band made entirely of Lego blocks, the Lego 3, perform for everyone. School groups and kids clubs want to take a road trip? Give them a call at 740-671-8890 for group rates. So, for 36,000 square feet of Lego fun, head over to the all-American town of Bel Air, Ohio, and visit the Toy and Plastic Brick Museum at 4597 Noble Street. Oh, and while you're there, don't forget the new space room's open now, too.
Copyrighted images created under license by Lego Group.